Good morning, St. Francis. It is Thursday, June the 1st, 2021, Thursday of the 13th week in Ordinary Time, the 13th week of the year. Coming to you this morning from the more commonly used entrance to the Friary/Rectory. It is the side that faces the entrance that faces a great parking lot here on this campus, marvelous parking lot. But this is the door through which most people would enter into the Friary/Rectory. And as you can see, it is verdantly in bloom with all kinds of leaves and things like that. So this entrance over here. In today's readings on this Thursday of the 13th week of the year, we hear from Genesis still, story of Abraham. This is the sacrifice of Isaac. Always the second reading in the Great Easter Vigil, but a sacrifice that seems unthinkable, abhorrent, horrific, awful. God would ask Abraham to sacrifice his only son, his heir. And Isaac is bound up and ready to be sacrificed, and it's at 11:55 of the 11th hour that God basically says, don't do this. Now, sometimes, again, we just get stuck on the fact that God is asking Abraham to do such a horrendous thing. But to understand this means we have to move deeper into what's going on. Abraham's great trust in an unseen God, whom he has questioned, all this time, even to the point of not really truly believing that his wife Sarah would have a son, and that he and his wife would have a son, now asks him to sacrifice, to give up this son. And it seems ridiculous. It seems absurd that God would ask something like this, and yet Abraham trusts. And that's the point. How much do we trust? How much do we dare to trust? Again, that our God knows what our God is doing, that our God has control of these things, even when the requests seem irrational, ridiculous, absurd, even abhorrent in some ways. How do we trust? How do we trust in God, that God will lead us through this to something more? Abraham does trust. And at that last moment, God says, don't do this. But because you trusted me, your line will become numerous. Your people, your family will become a great nation, and everyone will be blessed because of you, because you trusted in me. That is asking something very great of Abraham, and something that God does to be able to make sure that Abraham will give everything that he has to the plan that God has for him. Again, God asks us in many ways sometimes to do things that seem to be ridiculous and absurd, only so that we may be able to recognize more about what it means to be in relationship with God, and what it means to be a wondrous creation in that relationship with God. In the same way, in today's gospel from Matthew, again, we see the man who is paralyzed. And what Jesus does is first forgive the man's sins, to which the Pharisees and scribes, again, are abhorred by this, calling it blasphemy. Only God can forgive sins. Who is this man, Jesus? And Jesus, basically having to prove to them that there is something more in their midst, basically says, okay, if you don't believe that I can forgive the sins, then let's tell this man to get up and walk. And he does. Again, astonishment and amazement always, again, accompanies these kinds of things. But what does it mean, for those who think they know everything there is to know about God, when God all of a sudden acts in a way that is contrary to how they have painted God to be? It is always important to remember that human piety will not frustrate the design of God, even though sometimes we put more faith and more trust in that human piety than we do in actually what God is doing, and who God is, and what God is asking us to be, and what God is calling us to be in this world. In many ways, again, to overcome, again, the barriers that we set up ourselves because of our limited understandings of human piety and devotion to our unseen God, will many times jeopardize the great and wonderful ways in which God can work in our midst. But God will always work in our midst. Despite our obstinance, despite our wanting to box God into a very comfortable way, despite our ways sometimes of trusting in ourselves, than in this God who can do great things with us. May we learn always more and more the possibilities of abandoning all kinds of control and all kinds of barriers, and throw ourselves into the loving arms of God, and see what that may be able to accomplish, so the glory of God may continue to be revealed in every time, in every place. And may the Lord give you peace.